Hey guys, Chris here for Thomann Guitars and Basses. Welcome to Guitar Tech Tips Q&A number 7. As always, I just want to say thank you for all the support, all the cool comments, all the kind comments, and all the critique as well. We love seeing them, keep them coming, and let me answer a couple of them in today's Q&A video. As always, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell. Let's get into it. The first comment is from Alan Cousins. I used to play 12s and would break strings in nearly every show. Now I play 8s and never ever break them. I think the idea that heavier strings don't break is false. The additional tension offsets any strength you get from increased gauge. It's really interesting. I do not have an answer or any kind of explanation because I literally experienced the opposite of what you're saying. I used to play 9s and I kept on breaking them. I didn't change them for every show, I admit it, so that might be one of the reasons for that, but especially the high E string just broke all the time. So that's something that changed as soon as I swapped to 10s, which I'm using up to this day, 10, maybe 10 and a half, depending on the scale length and the tuning, of course. It's weird because most people I talk to, whether it's a guitar tech, a luthier, a player, a buddy, whoever it is, had the same experience as I did. And that's exactly what John Socko also told in the interview. Phil Collins, Guitar Tech. In case you missed the video, please check it out. It's really entertaining and I even learned a lot. If you have a thicker string, just think about it. It needs a longer time to corrode. Because as long as it's not corroded, it is just very sturdy, right? So if you have like 11s or 12s or 13s, it's just more metal right at the bridge where your palm rests on it and usually gets just destroyed or corroded or whatever it is. And that's where most strings break. If a string is thinner, it just tends to break earlier. But what I want you guys to do is to leave a comment below if you had the opposite experience. Like if you think that Alan is right and you also had issues with thicker strings, went back to thinner ones and they didn't break, because that would be like a big surprise. But I'm not saying you are not right. It's just very interesting. Vic Rattlehead. Hey Vic. I have a question for the next Q&A. Does it match a Gildo T-style neck with Harley Benton T-style body? Thanks. They don't really fit perfectly together. We actually recorded an episode where I explained what you should expect, what sort of issues to expect if you want to swap necks on your guitar. Mainly we're talking about F-style guitars, bolt-on guitars, T's, S models, etc., where people want to mix and match brands. It's almost never a good idea if you don't want to file and sort of fill holes and re-drill them and all of that stuff. Most of the time, the neck pocket of the body where the neck sits in is not gonna be the same wide, long, deep, whatever. So there is gonna be issues, probably. That's to be expected, and that's gonna be in this case as well, because Harley Benton guitars, depending on the model and the price range, will come from like Indonesia or other Asian countries, and Gildo necks are made in Japan, and they will fit best, at least that's what I tested last year, maybe 2 years ago, made in Japan Fender instruments. So there's that. If you want to mix like a Harley Benton body with a Gildo neck, you can make it happen, but expect some modding and some woodwork. Gerald Hilton has a couple of questions actually. First of all, coil tapping versus splitting, minimizing volume drop. Coil tapping helps with volume drop for sure. The only issue is that most pickups cannot be tapped if they're not made that way. Because if you tap a pickup, that's quite a hard task to explain, but let me try. So let's say you have a pickup that has 10,000 turns with the wire. If you want a tapped tone of that pickup, you will have to have an extra wire that exits the pickup around, I don't know, let's say 7,000 turns. And then of course you need the last wire at the end of the coil, like the 10,000 turns wire, and you have those different outputs or like wires coming from the pickup, and that's where you have to then go back and forth to have the tapped tone or the full wound coil. a pickup needs to be made that way to make it possible to tap it. So it's not really an option unless it's like that special circumstance. We shot an episode on how to get rid of that volume drop if you coil split a humbucker. Make sure to check it out. It's going to be linked somewhere around me or in the description box for sure. That's the resistor trick PRS does, and it's definitely awesome and it works, and you should definitely try it. Gerald's second question was, why not 50k logarithmic pots all around? That would just be too low of an impedance for passive pickups. You would not have any high end, any presence anymore. So it will just not really work, to be honest. Whoever started using 250 or 500k pots for passive pickups, humbuckers and single coils, they just stick to it. Next question, why not use logarithmic potentiometers for tone? I actually do use, not in all my guitars, but in most of my guitars, for a simple reason. I was not able to find that quality potentiometer I wanted that was linear. So I just put logarithmics in there, and it's just weird a bit because if you turn the pot down to 5, it's not 50% closed, right? So that's just something you have to get used to, but it's actually very useful if you don't want to close the tone pot all the way, all the time. If you're into just a bit less treble, that's gonna work because you can just dig in that tone pot and go down to whatever. 4 up until 7 or 8 will sound pretty much the same, and that is just more, well, comfortable, that you don't have to aim for an exact number on that knob. So there are pros and cons. And the last question is about the tone knob again, tone bleed fix. He's talking about the volume loss issue, which we perceive as such. If you are using modern wirings, and that's mainly the reason why most guitars have the modern wirings, not the 50s wiring, you don't really lose any volume if you turn down the tone. Even if you feel like you do, that's a perceived volume loss. It's more like, it sounds like it's quieter, even though it's not really. Like if you'd measure it, there would not be any difference except for losing all the frequencies, which change the perceived volume immensely. Like how our ears work, it's different with the 50s wiring. That's why some people will say no to it and will not want the benefits of a 50s wiring, because on most guitars it also depends on the pots, on the specific pickups in the guitar, but it's not unusual to lose volume, like actually output, if you turn down that tone, because the tone is connected to the output of the volume knob, volume pot. You have a different relation between the two pots, and then tone actually does suck a little volume too. Like you feel it that your overdrive all of a sudden sort of disappears or gets less distorted, which is a clear sign for that volume loss. And otherwise it's really just a perceived thing. I don't know if there's an easy fix to change that. If anyone has a really cool idea, of course, as always, leave it in the comments below. All right, the next one is really interesting and has a perfect timing. You'll know why in a second. This is from Jim Kiosis. Nice video again, but Chris, can you tell me what's wrong with my guitar? It chokes to no sound bending a whole step on the 14th fret on high E. Okay, so it chokes out if you bend the high E on the 14th fret. Okay, it's a Strat with 12-inch radius. Thanks. Okay, so 12-inch radius is relatively flat already, so that should not be the issue. If you have like anything flatter than 9.5 or even 9.5, that works too already, you should not have this choking out when you bend the note. There can be a number of reasons for this. First of all, it can be that your string is just too low and it doesn't have enough clearance to ring out when you bend that note, right? So that's like the most obvious, most simple solution in case that's the only issue. Second one is that the 14th fret, where you want to bend that note, is just too low compared to all the other frets around it, especially the frets above it, like the 15th and 16th. So that's an issue. If one fret is lower than the rest, you'll have to take care of that, which might require some special tools, experience, and just fret leveling, basically. We have some episodes on that, so you can check it out how that works. But before you consider doing anything like leveling the frets or anything, you have to make sure that it's the case, that the 14th is too low. You don't want to refret and level the frets unless it's really necessary. Which brings me to the next possible issue, and that's that the 15th is just too high. Right? So there are so many little things that can mess up the that region of the neck. Maybe the 14th is perfect, maybe the 15th or the 16th are too high. And then you have to level those to match the height of all the other frets. So as told, there are many, many reasons for something like this, and you have to make sure that you have the exact issue. You figured out the problem. The last thing that comes in mind if something like this happens is that maybe the neck is twisted. It could be that it just doesn't run absolutely straight. It might do something like this. And that's, of course, again, an issue, a bigger one. That's the biggest one, actually. And I really hope that's not the case with your guitar. If you're not sure about the reason for that issue and you cannot figure it out, you tried and tested the fret height and you still are not sure, please visit a guitar tech or a guitar luthier, because it's probably not a huge issue, but you have to know exactly what the problem is. Okay, so these are the options. And last but not least, I have two awesome comments I wanted to react to. First is from Joseph Hughes. Chris, as always, a terrific tech show. I have a semi-hollow body that looks almost exactly the same as yours in the show. You just made me appreciate guitar techs so much more because I'm not going to attempt all that, lol. You did just fantastic, great tech work. Thank you so much, Joe. And the other one is from Count Dunkelheit Covers. Awesome name. Yeah, I'm good. If I ever get a hollow body, I'ma just leave it alone. And yeah, I read these two comments because they pretty much say the same thing. First of all, thank you so much for, the kind words. But I think it's important to address this. We show on Guitar Tech Tips sometimes things that are really not that easy to do. And we are not saying that you should try everything on your guitar and whatever. At the beginning of this whole Guitar Tech Tips series, we started off by showing all the main basics, like how to set up a guitar, intonation, pickup height, all those important things that one should really know and be able to do himself, because you will not always have a guitar tech, a luthier, a professional around you to help you out. If you have, that's awesome, but some of us just live way too far from the next place where you would trust them and they could take care of your guitar for each and every small little thing, whether it's changing strings, setting up the neck a little bit, or adjusting the intonation. So we started off with showing all the basics, which is highly recommended to train and do on your own guitar. You cannot really destroy anything. But at this point, we arrived to subjects, some of which are just way too complex. So I'm not saying you should dress the frets or level the frets on your favorite, super expensive guitar. It's just something that we want to show because some people will experiment on their own instruments and mod them anyhow. So we figured it's best to give you all the tools you need to hit the tone. Oh, what? To give you all the information we can give to avoid most of the unnecessary huge issues you can have if you mess up something, which is also something I did a lot. And you don't necessarily have to figure out everything yourself. If you want to do it yourself, hopefully the video will help you. If you do not want to, at least you know what you're paying for if you're going to a workshop and pay the guitar tech, because it is a lot of work and it's pretty complicated too. I cannot say this enough. We love seeing all the comments, and whether it's just a question, your own experience, like sharing your own experience, or a critique because you don't agree with whatever I said in one of the episodes, keep them coming. That's exactly what I want to see and sort of shape a little community of self-helping guitar players to figure out all the issues on our instruments. You guys take it easy, and of course, as always, don't be afraid of setting up and fixing your guitars yourself. It's time to become your own guitar tech. Welcome to Guitar Tech Tips. Le once more. Welcome to Guitar Tech Tips Q&A. I'm giving my best.
We're not native.
Yeah, but it's
We
like...
butcher names anyway.
But not English native names. That's like the worst thing. Ho, ho, ho.